Y'all are doing good up there. I appreciate it. Christopher said, keep going. This is a passage that's kind of unusual from Luke, and this is the calling of the disciples. It's early in the Gospel of Luke, telling us that it's how Jesus begins his ministry and encourages others to follow him on the way. But I know this story from somewhere else. Do you know it? From the Gospel of John? Perhaps Jesus on the morning after his resurrection says, go and put the nets in. It's a post-resurrection story in the Gospel of John. But we're not in John, we're in Luke. One of the things that it's important, I think, for us to hear and to remember is that we're in the season after Epiphany. And so sometimes during this season after Epiphany, it means a great big aha moment whenever you read the Scripture. That's part of what's here. Aha! The light bulb goes off. The light shines. The bright dark gets bright. The sound that doesn't work begins to work. All that stuff. These aha moments. The Sunday that we canceled church, I don't know, I listened to some other churches a little bit along, and I also watched that Sunday morning show I think that's the name of it, Sunday Morning, isn't that right? On CBS. They had a guy that had a light bulb collection. Are you serious? Can you believe that? They were all these light bulbs that were like from 1900 something or 18 something, and I mean they were all these different shapes and all these different sizes. I thought, despite being in my house with my random little collections of random stuff that nobody else thinks is very important, you got to be kidding me. Light bulbs? Then they go on to say that they had a convention, and people had come all over the world to hear this man talk about a light bulb for an hour and 45 minutes or something like that. You've got to be kidding. Oh, it gets worse. This guy had actually traveled the world to pick up a light bulb and bring it back to his collection. He had gone like to France and Switzerland. I mean, he says they're super fragile and the filaments, they do get. The old light bulbs, sometimes the incandescent light bulbs, you could take one out that was working and move it around a half inch and then put it back in there and the darn thing would not work. Those filaments got pretty soft. But this guy had a light bulb collection, a whole room full of them with showcases and all. I do not understand it, and yet I found it fascinating. I'm like, I could do that. It was one of those aha moments. I mean, the very thing to be able to possess. And he had like a light bulb from like the late 1800s or something like that. I don't remember exactly. It's been a little while. But he had this light bulb and he put it into a harness and he opened it up. Like he actually turned it on. And they said, oh, is that as bright as it gets? And he says, oh, no, but we're not even going close to that. He had paid several thousands of dollars for like 5 figures for light bulbs. It was amazing. The aha moment. But yet the power of just trying to acquire and understand how light and to see a little bit brighter. Oh, you can think about that. A light bulb, how it revolutionized the world. We'd have to all go to bed about 6 or 7. All the time. Well, except for summer, and once the time changes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But it wouldn't be the same without having a little bit of light, an aha moment in our lives and in our world. Poor Peter, I tell you, Peter gets a bad rap. It doesn't matter what Peter does. It ain't ever right. We give poor Peter a whole time of challenge. Peter, though, he's the first one in, and he don't mind. He's ready to defend Jesus. And today we hear him in his calling. And he, again, is the one, I don't know, there are people like that. They're just willing to talk first. That's good to have around. Sometimes it buys you a little time to think about what the right answer is. And yet at the same time, you need sometimes that sets The initial conversation that is said sets the tone for the room. But Peter's out there, and they have been out there all night. They fished at night, had these nets, and you can imagine dropping these nets into the water, pulling them up. An old rope, it gets heavy when it gets wet. I mean, I haven't had to go fishing with a rope net, but I have, growing up, we used to have, every once in a while, there'd be a wet piece of rope around Grandpa's store, and they'd have to roll it up. It was always 6 times heavier than a regular piece of rope. So I can imagine the weight of those nets to pull them in, to drop them over the fish, hopefully, and then it just goes to pull them back in, and then there's nothing in there. You ever feel like that? It's like, I am going after the world and what's going on, and I'm getting nowhere fast. Oh, Peter, Peter, drop your nets in. You can just imagine this. Now, Jesus and Peter didn't have a whole lot of prior experience and interaction. It's one thing if you know it's a person that you can trust and that you love and that cares about you, and they tell you to do something, you're like, this is kind of crazy, but it would just be easier to go ahead and do it. Because they care about you and they have your best interest at heart. But Jesus and Peter, they didn't know. They didn't know what was going on just yet. Hey, Peter, drop your net in on the other side of the boat since you're good and tired now and are ready to work all night. Let's go do something different. You have got to be kidding me. You can't be serious. There's no way. I am done with this. I've done it all night. My arm's already sore, and I'm ready to go home. Put my feet up, have a cup of coffee, take a nap. And Jesus is like, no, put them in the other side. Something about Peter understanding, and he does it. There's kind of, I'm sure this is part of it. I mean, you'd cast out and then pull in, and you'd use your stronger arm to pull the net in because it was heavy. To be able to cast from the other side of the boat, you'd either have to be fishing backwards that you're not used to, or you'd have to use your less dominant hand, or perhaps vice versa. But anyway, it would be an inconvenience. And for somebody standing on the shore telling me how to do what I should do that hadn't perhaps ever fished, I don't know if he or she's ever fished before, they're telling me to fish, I'm not going to listen to them. I know what I'm talking about here. I'm not going to do that. And yet Peter does. He throws in the net on the other side. Throws the net in on the other side of the boat, and the darn thing comes up full. Full so much that the net's about to break. And then call the friends over, hey, come over, help. Perhaps Jesus understands. Because when he gathers in, we tell it he's right there at the lake, that the crowd has pressed in around him. And so there's some more followers on his way. There are more people beginning to come after, follow him, to listen to what he's teaching and what he's saying. And he realizes that he needs a little help. Perhaps that's part of the lesson here, especially right now where we are in this world and in this pandemic and then what all is going on. Sometimes we need a little help. Just to listen, a friend, to call. I don't know. How can we help, or how do we need help? Reach out to family or friends or loved one. Professional counselor, whatever it is that we might need. Get us through. To help us to hear a new way of doing stuff. The longer I'm on the journey of faith, the more I realize that I have to understand that it's not about me and my wants and my needs and my desires, but it's about where God's calling me, what God's calling me to do, how God is calling me to enable and to make possible community of faith and community of caring around me. I see it all the time. I keep getting more and more Like when I go out and see these things, I observe people. People ask me, how long do you work on your sermon? And I'm like, I don't know. Sometimes I work on my sermon while I'm mowing the grass. Sometimes I do it while I'm sitting in traffic. Sometimes I do it in the shower. I mean, you don't know where you do work on the sermon. I mean, where do you figure out how to attack the next problem in your life? Where do you do that? Washing dishes at the sink, looking out the window? Where do we do those things? Going out and about and around, and you see people, a lot of people, I appreciate them, especially when I'm around them. They wear their mask. You all are doing an A+1A job this morning, and I thank you so much. You don't understand how grateful I am in my prayer life to have a congregation who's willing to embrace vaccination and to wear masks. I don't know how my colleagues do it. I say a prayer for them, and I hope you do too. That people that don't want to. But I keep thinking, and it reminds me of the reason that I wear a mask when I'm out. It's not necessarily, I think I'd be all right. I mean, I'm pretty stubborn and fairly healthy. I've had the vaccination, all that stuff. I think I'd be all right. But I'm afraid that I might not just be the only one that gets COVID. I wear a mask because, not so much for myself, but for other people. Because I care about them. Oh. I think that's what being Christian means. Is to being willing and to care for something other than ourselves. And in the American understanding and the mindset of you can do anything for yourself. You can pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. You don't need anybody else. We've lost that idea of understanding and oneness. Even though we may not think alike or believe alike, we're still ultimately either people of faith, American citizens, or nevertheless just basic good old neighbors. Like the Good Samaritan kind. Who is my neighbor? We miss that point in life. But I think the more I go out and I see things, the thing I realize is, I play with this in the light of my American history understanding, and I love American history and, this rugged individualism, and, we can do it. And I also think of the corporate nature, and I think of rights and freedoms. Yeah, we got a lot of them in this country, great things to be thankful for, but we also, our rights and our freedoms stop when they begin to limit and unempower others around us. Oh, the American spirit is wonderful. Oh, it can do anything. It can, we've taken on Nazis. We've taken on invasions. We've taken on pandemics before. We've taken on polio. Think of the miracles that have happened in American laboratories and medical laboratories around the world. I'm not just saying that America's the only way, but I'm saying it's one way. It's the way I know, because that's where I am. I'm saying when we come together, we see things in a different light. I think that's what it means to be Christian, is to see things in a different light. I think what it means to be Christian and when we live out our faith is sometimes listening to things that don't exactly make sense and giving them a try. I'm not saying, outlandish things, but when you hear this inner prompting, this continuation of this gospel integration into our lives of what's going on and how we might interpret things, how we might see the world and care for our neighbor, how we might love our loved ones, it might make a difference in how we work and live, how we see things. Sometimes you have to try again. It's like sometimes you just get lost and cry a little bit and somebody will come and save you. You hope it's Jesus or Officer Dan. Yeah, Detective Dan, sorry. I'm a little slow sometimes. It takes me a while to catch up. But when we see things and when we understand things through the light of Christ being in our lives, when we've been invited to follow after Him and to live our life after the way and how He lived and how He calls us to live, how we see our neighbors as ourselves as we care for one another, we understand that faith beginning to work and to change us. We're willing to cast the nets on the other side of the boat after we've worked all night, partly because Jesus invites us to. Sometimes, oftentimes, when we hear that prompting and that inner voice, we learn that Christ is moving in our lives to make a difference in the world around us. I don't know. Sometimes I get just amazed that I feel like, seriously, you're saying, now this is what the preacher's trying to say this morning, that somebody like me, somebody like you, can bear the fullness and the challenge and the effort of the gospel in the world for others. I get Isaiah, I wouldn't feel worthy either, but now I don't want to get a hot coal put to my lips either. But I do think the invitation of Christ is extended to us to be able to reach out and to share this love that we make through Christ in the world and just be amazed at the power of God to work in and through us in the world. This journey of faith with Jesus, it's really, it's unnerving. We don't know what it's going to look like. I can guarantee you it's not going to be perfect or easy. But I also encourage you, ask you to hear that call of Christ in your life. Be able to look at things through different eyes, through the eyes of the gospel, and to reach out in His love and grace that's been extended to each of us. All glory, honor, and power be to the one who was, who is, and who is to come. Amen.